In a previous video, we checked out Denver Air Connection, connecting through Telluride to board their incredibly rare Dornier 328 jet. The beautiful Rocky Mountain views in a very unique aircraft ended up making that one of my favorite flights. The 328 isn't the only rare aircraft this airline flies. They also use the Fairchild Metroliner, a small twin-engine turboprop dating all the way back to the early 70s. So, a rare forgotten regional turbo flying low through the Rockies? How could I resist? Welcome to Phoenix Sky Harbor's Terminal 4. I just arrived here aboard an American Airlines flight, one of 3 airlines that code-shares with Denver Air Connection, or just DAC for short. Annoyingly though, American and DAC don't share a terminal here, since Terminal 4 is completely dominated by just American and Southwest. Every other airline has to squeeze into the much smaller Terminal 3, including Denver Air Connection's 2 other codeshare partners, Delta and United. This means we need to leave security to transfer since there is no post-security connection between the 2 terminals. At least the transfer means we get to take the SkyTrain and enjoy some nice views. Security thankfully looks light today, but I'll need to go check in physically. Even though DAC allows online check-in, the e-tickets don't seem to work, at least for the Metroliners. 20 minutes later, we have our paper tickets and are through security. Time to find our gate. It looks like F14, which is all the way at the end of the terminal. I just realized, I haven't even said where we're flying yet. Well, today we'll be heading to Cortez, a small town of just under 10,000 people in the southwestern edge of Colorado, and whose airport is only served by a few Denver Air Connection flights a day. From there we will hop back on the same aircraft to continue on to DAC's home, Denver. Both legs of the trip will be just over an hour. Here we are, F14. Our aircraft isn't here yet, so I decided to do a bit of spotting. It looks like DAC isn't the only turboprop operator in Phoenix, since I caught the Southern Airways Express Cessna 208, which had just arrived from Imperial, a small town in between the Salton Sea and the Mexican border. I also saw November 860 Delta Alpha, one of 2 former Delta 777-200s that now operate as a private jet for the Arizona Cardinals. Finally, I was surprised to see one of Delta's rare 767-400s, since they don't normally come to Phoenix. It looks like this one was running its normal LAX to JFK route, but had to divert here earlier this morning. Luckily, I caught it just as it was getting ready to get back on track to JFK. It seems while I was distracted by the Delta 767, our aircraft snuck in. If you want more high-quality flight reviews like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Anyway, let's go see our plane. This is November 889 Delta Charlie, a 32-year-old Fairchild Metroliner 23 with quite a long history behind it. It was originally delivered to Aero Litoral, now Aeromexico Connect, in the end of 1992, where it served its first 10 years. In 2003, it moved to Australia, where it first flew for Horizon Airlines, and then Mac Air. In 2009, it moved to Venezuela to fly for charter company Helitech, and finally, in June 2023, just a few months before this was filmed, it joined Denver Air Connection, bringing their fleet of these aircraft up to just 4. Finally, time to board. Our aircraft only seats a maximum of 9 passengers, so we are just collected at the gate and walked out to the plane as a group. Flights like ours, and the Southern Airways Cessna 208 we saw earlier, are operating under the Essential Air Service Program, a government subsidy that keeps small isolated communities that might not normally be profitable, like Cortez and Imperial, connected. This, by the way, is a Beechcraft King Air, normally a business turboprop that is also being used by an Essential Air Service carrier, Advanced Air. Anyway, this system has created a niche market of small airlines flying fleets of pretty unusual aircraft that exist mainly on these contracts and charters. Although many of the larger routes that can support regional jets like ERJs are served by mainstream airlines. The subsidies also mean these flights are kept at a pretty reasonable price. Each leg of this flight was just $139, and they've only gotten cheaper, now selling for just $109. Surprisingly for a small plane like this, DAC uses open seating. The seats are staggered, with 4 on the left and 5 on the right side. I decided to go for the back row. 8A, so I could get a nice view of the wing, although I'll definitely need to aim for the front on the next leg of this trip since this aircraft has no cockpit door. The legroom on this aircraft is insane. I'm not even actually able to reach the seatback pocket in front of me. It turns out you're actually supposed to use the seatback pocket across from you, but I won't know this till later in the flight. This aircraft also does have an overhead air vent and reading light, which I think is activated by this button, but there's no labels, so I'm not sure. The ridiculous legroom on this aircraft is not normal for a Metroliner, and is definitely not for my comfort, even though I appreciate it. Normally these aircraft fit up to 19 seats, but Denver Air has lowered the seat count to 9 on all 4 of their Metros by removing every other seat, which lightens the regulations applied to this aircraft. You will find most small essential air service carriers using planes built for just 9 seats, like Cape Air's Tecnam Travelers, and Southern Air Express Cessna 208s for the same reason, although taking a larger plane and stripping seats is rather creative. Time to take off. I'll give you a break from my voice to let you enjoy the sound of these engines and rejoin you back in the air. Welcome back. Now that we're in the air, let's check out the in-flight service. To start off, Denver Air Metros have no in-flight service, because, well, there's no flight attendant. They did hand out water bottles at the gate just before boarding, though, so I'll count that. Normally on Denver Air's larger aircraft, there is actually a pretty great service, with the flight attendants walking around with a tray full of snacks. This aircraft also, unsurprisingly, lacks in-flight entertainment, unless you count the beautiful views, of course. While passing over the Arizona high desert, I noticed a meteor crater, which is called Meteor Crater? Why not? It's straightforward enough. Now, DAC using just 4 Metros with reduced seating instead of a smaller plane built for 9 seats seems pretty odd, but it makes more sense when looking at DAC's parent company, Key Lime Air. They use a fleet of 24 Metros in total, with 16 for cargo, 4 for passenger charter that, funnily enough, have all 19 seats installed, and 4 for Denver Air Connection. DAC is actually just the brand name used on Key Lime's scheduled passenger flights. Aside from that, Key Lime also operates a few 30-seater Dornier 328 jets and 50-seater ERJ 145s, which are interchangeable between Key Lime and DAC flights. Most interestingly, Key Lime also operates a single Embraer 120 for cargo, although it used to fly passengers for DAC. I'm sad to have missed that. Up until now, the flight has been fairly smooth, but thanks to this patch of hills below us, it's getting really rough. Once we arrive into Cortez, I actually overheard the person next to me say they thought the plane was going to go down because of this turbulence. I have to say, I can understand why. The lack of an armrest makes the seat feel really insecure, and the noise, when I don't turn it down for you, can be really overwhelming. I'm having the time of my life, though. Thankfully, for the sake of the footage quality and everyone else in the plane, the ground should smooth out again soon. And just a few minutes later, nice and smooth again. Perfect timing to get a nice look at Shiprock. Denver Air Connection has quite the wide route map, of course with a base in Denver, Chicago O'Hare, and Minneapolis St. Paul. Their metros actually only operate a few routes out of Denver. The vast majority of the work is done by their Dorniers and Embraers. Out of all these routes, only 2 are not essential air service. Dubuque from Chicago and Telluride from Denver to Phoenix, which is the route I used to check out Dax D328 previously. And just like that, it's time to descend into Cortez. I'll be back with you on the ground. Welcome to Cortez. Don't leave just yet, we still have another leg of this trip to go. Despite the size of this plane, the large cargo compartment that you can see in the back allows you to check bags for super cheap. You can also take full-sized carry-ons with you that'll just be gate-checked. I'm only traveling with a small backpack today, which I was able to take into the cabin and store under my seat. Or, I guess just my feet. Our layover will only be about 30 minutes, and security won't even open up until it's time to leave, but despite this airport's small size, there's a ton to look at. It has a lot of history, which is proudly displayed all over the airport, from a piece in its first airline service, to a record-setting 10-day circumnavigation of the globe based here. Most interestingly, in 1959, a still top-secret U-2 suffered an engine flameout in the middle of the night, and with Cortez being the only lighted runway in sight, had to make an emergency landing here. The pilot earned a Distinguished Flying Cross for landing the notoriously hard-to-land plane in a pitch-black valley, which is displayed alongside a U-2 flight suit. Although, I don't know if they're originals. The rest of the airport is just a crew rest area, check-in desk, bathrooms, and a waiting area. Outside you will just be met by a parking lot, although the view is nice.
We're going to go ahead and open up security, just a few announcements.
Once security opens up, passengers are collected in this waiting area. Luckily, I was the first through since I was already standing there filming. And once everyone is through, just like in Phoenix, we are walked out to the plane as a group. Seating is still free, so this time we went for the front row with the cockpit view. The seat has no seatback pocket in front of it, or off to the side at all, which is where I have finally learned that I'm supposed to use the one in the seat next to me. This means I can finally take a look through the safety card.
Likely event will lost cabin pressure. An oxygen mask is located in the seat pocket in front of you across out. When instructed by your flight crew, remove the mask from the best bag. Plug it in something up, see.
I am still loving this legroom. It makes this plane actually very comfortable. I also just noticed that the plaques for the removed seats are still in place. That cockpit view is super cool. This was definitely the right choice of seat. And once again, I'll be rejoining you after takeoff. Oh my god, it is so much louder up here near the engine. Not that it's exactly quiet anywhere on the plane. It looks like we are finally over the Rocky Mountains, which has brought us some turbulence, although nothing like last time. I hope nothing blocks the views. I've really been looking forward to them. Well, I can take this time to talk a little bit about this aircraft. While I have referred to it as the Fairchild Metroliner, it was actually initially developed by a small and pretty odd San Antonio-based manufacturer, Swearingen. The company got its start in the early 60s by making modifications to Beechcraft Queen Airs, before making its first aircraft, the Merlin, a light business twin turboprop, which used salvaged Queen Air wings and tails on their own unique pressurized cabin. In the late 60s, the company designed a stretch of the Merlin, finally with its own wings, the Metroliner. It was intended to compete in the 19-seater market, the maximum amount of seats you can have without a flight attendant. Swearingen ran into financial troubles before getting the aircraft off the ground, though, so they were sold to Fairchild, who were already building the wings for the Metro anyway. The aircraft quickly proved successful, especially with Australian, Canadian, and major US carriers like American, Delta, and Northwest. Production ran from 1972 to 1998, with over 600 units built. Finally, we can enjoy the views again. Some of the mountains below us can reach as high as 14,000 feet, which makes our current cruising altitude of just 21,000 seem rather unimpressive. Although Metroliners haven't been in production for more than 25 years now, around 200 of the 600 produced remain in service today, although the only major passenger operators left are DAC, Sharp Air in Australia, and Perimeter Aviation in Canada. The rest are operated as passenger charter or cargo aircraft by operators like Key Lime. It's starting to get properly bumpy again, just as we finish crossing the Rockies and arrive at Denver. I love how obvious the border between the Rockies and the Great Plains is. The contrast is just incredible. Before the end of this trip, I think it's worth bringing up one last topic: DEC's reliability. They claim to have a really high on-time performance, although emphasis on they claim. There is no independent data I could find. Looking at some of their routes on Flight Radar, it's a mixed bag. The Cortez flights seem pretty reliable, but their flights to McCook tell a very different story. This could be because of the Metroliner and its poor maintenance reputation, but looking at their jet-operated routes gives the same inconsistency, so that's something worth keeping in mind if you happen to actually fly DEC. I have actually experienced this firsthand. I tried to fly this aircraft back in 2022, but the flight was canceled for maintenance, and all the flights the next day were full, forcing me to return home. The customer service with DEC was actually really great, but the ticket was booked through United, and the airlines don't really communicate. The United customer service didn't even seem to know what DEC was, so it was an endless back and forth. In the end, I did receive a voucher that got me on that normally very expensive Telluride flight though, so no complaints here. And with this really cool view of Denver International, it looks like we are almost done with the flight. Once again, I'll be back with you once we're on the ground.
Welcome to Denver. Give us 2 minutes to get you off.
Welcome to Denver, one of the world's largest airports, which really hits you while taxiing in a small plane like this. This has been such a cool trip. Now that we are at DEC's hub, we can finally see their jets. I do have a lot of respect for this little airline. While they may at times be unreliable, they do serve an important function through the Essential Air Service program. I can't say I'm unbiased, though. As a fan of aviation, I can't help but love an airline with a fleet as weird as this, and flying on an aircraft like the Metro is always an amazing time, especially knowing I'll probably never end up on one again, thankfully for my hearing. I hope you enjoyed this flight too, as videos like this take a lot of effort. Well, I have a flight home with Delta to catch, so I'll be leaving you here. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.